Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. It's in the description below. Reach out to tmosso@thewatchbox.com. And today we are discussing a de Bethune timepiece launched in 2008 with 6 days of automatic winding power reserve. This is the 48mm red gold de Bethune DB22 Power Reserve, a sports watch that's also 200 meters water resistant and shock resistant. Though 48, it is not a hunky or chunky case. The timepiece is only 11.3 millimeters thick. From lug to lug, it's a reasonable 52.5 millimeters, and it has a broad and proportional 26 millimeter spacing between its lugs. So normally I would say 48 millimeter watch, don't even think about wearing it on a wrist smaller than 17 centimeters circumference or up. But on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, here's your over-the-top shot, here's your cuff shot, showing you just how thin it really is. It's actually thinner than a Rolex Daytona. And then here's the down-the-barrel shot, which proves that this watch is viable on a 16 centimeter circumference wrist. I wouldn't necessarily wear it on a smaller wrist than mine, but on this size wrist, you're going to find absolutely no quarrel with the shape or the lugs. Well done, de Bethune, a huge watch that wears like a medium watch. Now, taking a look at the strap, as with the spacing of the lugs, it's broad to match the size of the case, so it looks proportional. It's properly spec'd with large rectangular scale gator on the top, semi-gloss, monotone black stitch, sheer-sided construction showing quite a bit of leather used. And then on the underside, you can see that this is a de Bethune factory strap in brand new condition, and they use small round scale gator on the bottom. The purpose of using gator on both sides is to make a longer wearing, more luxurious strap. More expensive, but this watch is worth it. It comes with a simple de Bethune buckle, but note that the sculpting on the flank of the buckle actually matches the sculpting of the lug profile. So design parallelism everywhere, no default designs, no detail overlooked. Now jumping back, and you can even see in profile there's a little bit of a teardrop appendage on the bottom of the buckle that also appears on the underside of the lug. So truly well thought out in every regard. It's angular, and it's different from the early de Bethune watches, which tended to be a little bit more classically inspired and organically curved. And it's also quite distinct from the mobile lug spaceship aesthetic of the later DB28s. So the DB20 series of cases, of which this is one, were interesting mid-de Bethune timepieces, transitional designs as the manufacturer moved away from its early days of vintage evocative design towards the ultimate DB28 floating lug aesthetic. These are all rare watches built in no more than a few dozen examples in each model, in each metal, so you're guaranteed exclusivity when collectors finally recognize that the early and mid-de Bethune pieces are highly collectible and historically important in the realm of independent horology. Now you can see the crown, like everything else, not a default design. There are some character lines molded in, but there's also drilling on the profile. It is a screw-down crown. It is a 200-meter water-resistant case. And then we have a layered bezel inboard of wonderfully contrasting curves and creases on the lug profile. So you can see that not only do we have that sharp band along the flank, as well as angular deviation of lug lines, but we have media blasting inboard and polishing outboard to create sharp, one might even say severe geometries and contrasts in color and tone. You can see the same as the top of the bezel is media blasted, and then the flanks are all of high polish, so no detail overlooked right down to the actual custom bolts used to fix the bezel to the case. Remember, this was the first highly water-resistant de Bethune, and the construction is tank-like. 200 meters water-resistant, and the design parallelism continues as the outboard bezel and the inboard bezel of high polish feature the same rounded polygonal shape. When we move further inboard, you can see that the minute track, which is silver satin metallic, features blued versions of the outboard screws. Now, what you have inboard of the hours and the minutes is what de Bethune calls micro-light engraving. It's a very shallow, reductive engraving that they use in lieu of alternatives like conventional guilloche. It creates a soft and, one might say, dynamic lighting effect across the dial because it catches the light and warps it in ways that a conventional sunburst would not. Now, the hands at center feature blued titanium and polished steel. And then up at 12 o'clock, we have the namesake of the watch, the Power Reserve. I'll pull the crown out. We'll move the minute hand out of the way. And you can see the Power Reserve actually transforms from red to blue as it winds itself. And though you can manually wind this watch, it is not necessary because it uses the caliber 2024 automatic. This was patented back in 2006, 2 years before the model came out. It is the most efficient winder on the market with unidirectional winding, a blued titanium rotor, and then a platinum mass outboard. And you can see just how long the effective lever arm is, so the leverage that it achieves is enormous. Normally this would make a movement rotor particularly susceptible to shock, and the bearing at center would take a beating. The solution here is to have the 4 sprung cantilevers that overlap the center of the rotor and prevent it from torquing unnecessarily at the ceramic bearing underneath. So it is a shock protection system patented in 2006 that uses jewels within the cantilever springs to prevent stiction of the rotor against the springs. So they thought of everything. Shock protection continues down at the balance, where we have 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs, Inca block at center, and then triple parachute, 2 flanking balance bridge anchor point springs. And this is as much to achieve chronometry as to brace against shock, as the real point of this system, though it is hardy and robust against shock, it's there to prevent excessive displacement of the balance staff. So while it does make this watch almost indestructible from a shock standpoint, accuracy is the point. There is a yoke-style balance that's a combination of titanium and platinum. And when I say it's a yoke, I mean it's non-annular. So if you take a look at another example, a titanium DB22, you can see the bulbs of platinum and the fact that this is not a balance wheel in the conventional sense because it has an open rim on 2 sides. Now, jumping back to our DB22 in rose gold, you'll also note that the hairspring itself is off-centered. It is effectively like an overcoil in that it beats concentrically in any position, so you won't gain time depending on or lose time depending on how you orient the watch, but because it uses 2 elements, a hand-bent outer curve and then a secondary inner curve, it manages to achieve that overcoil performance without the height and the shock susceptibility of an overcoil. Finally, there is a silicone escape wheel that reduces friction and improves power reserve. Once again, this is a power reserve of 6 days automatic winding. The shock protection, both for the rotor and triple parachute, the balance, the hairspring, all of this patented. This is Bethune, where all of the technology is proprietary, where dial, case, and movement all are made in-house. Email tmosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details of this watch from a company that since 2002 has made less than 3,000 watches and which makes 150 watches a year.